recording and
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to 30 on Thursdays, SusQtech's bi-weekly webinar series. Today we have a great session lined up, Battle of the Apps, SharePoint Mobile App Review. A couple quick things before we get into today's presentation. For those of you joining us the first time, 30 on Thursdays, as I said, is a bi-weekly 30-minute webinar series where we talk about just about anything related to SharePoint. Our next one will be 2 weeks from today at 1:30. We'll do digital signatures for contract management with Cosign and see how you can use digital signatures in the confines of a contract management application. And for a full schedule of all of our webinars and an archive of past recordings, you can go to SusQtech.com/webinars. And at any time during today's presentation, if you do have a question, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar chat window located on the right, and we'll go ahead and get through as many questions as we can. One other quick note, as we're going to talk about mobile today, we just announced earlier today a paid webinar that we have coming up, Responsive Web Design for SharePoint. This covers using responsive website design on a SharePoint site for viewing content in multiple screens, whether that be a desktop browser, a tablet application, or a mobile device. And that's going to happen on June 27th from 1 to 4. And there's more information on that on our website. So without further ado, we're going to jump into today's session, which is, again, the SharePoint Mobile App Review. Our presenter is Julie Muccillo from SusQtech. I will be your moderator. My name is Steve Witt, and I'm the VP of Training and Product here at SusQtech. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Julie. Julie, say hi to everybody.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are going to get my desktop shared here in just a second, and we will get going here. So, all right. If everyone can see my screen, we're going to get started.
Yep, I can see it just fine.
Fantastic. Thanks. So today what I wanted to do is walk everyone through the world of SharePoint mobile apps. This is a field that in the past 6 to 12 months has really blown up in terms of offerings, in terms of opportunities, in terms of different types of things you'll see out there. It's very exciting. It was really fun for me to kind of dig into this and explore so that I can share this information with you. We're going to briefly look at what SharePoint offers out of the box with mobile. Then we're going to kind of look at a little bit at the market and what some of the options are out there. And then we're going to review a few of the key apps and what are some of those killer features that make an app great and why you should be looking for, particular features and what you want to do with your apps. So just a couple of caveats. All of these are iPad apps, primarily because everyone is building for the iPad. So what you're going to see today are a lot of screenshots from different applications that are all iPad apps. So this is going to be a really great opportunity for you guys to quickly see a lot of different interfaces and really dig into what's different about all of these apps that seem very similar. So SharePoint M, or SharePoint Mobile out of the box, leaves a little bit to be desired. When you take a look at it, sure, you can browse, you can kind of get through some of your content. It does come with the SharePoint platform, so simply enabling it, you're going to be able to kind of browse through some document libraries, lists, etc., etc. But it really doesn't get you a lot of features. It's not very user-friendly. Obviously, you have to be connected to the internet to be browsing that, or connected to your network. And there's really not a lot of editing or any sort of advanced capability. It truly is just sort of a dumb screen with a few links and not much more than that. So that is sort of what you get out of the box, and really if you put very little effort in, this is what you're going to get out. So Then we have, sort of on the flip side, what does your actual SharePoint site look like on an iPad? Well, it looks pretty good, actually. If you take a look at this screenshot, it looks, pretty much just like our normal site does. But what happens is, once you get into some of the editing menus, once you get into actually how do you edit and what tools would open, what tools are available to you, you really get stuck. And so just browsing through the site might get you the opportunity to see some documents, and again, get you partway through some editing process. You can even do some page editing through an iPad, but you're not going to get that robust features that you have through really using SharePoint, checking out, editing, uploading new documents, all of those things. Those are all not officially supported in terms of trying to get through the iPad, and really leaves you with a little bit of a dead end here and there. So, and again, you have to be connected, obviously, to browse through a browser. So what we wanted to do is really take a look at the market now, the apps market. And again, as I mentioned, these are all iPad apps. If you go to the App Store, do a search for SharePoint, you're going to get over 50 results. Now, some of those results are books and things like that, but there are a lot of applications that have cropped up, and they all have different features, and what we would like to do is really kind of guide you through what are the things that you should be looking for, and then you can decide what's important to your organization. There's a lot of different price points, a lot of different capabilities, and so we wanted to take a look at which ones are really the best. We took a broad look and we picked 5 apps. We have Colligo Briefcase, we have Harmon.ie, Filamente, SharePlus, and Moprise. For the purposes of all of the testing, I used Quick Office Pro HD as the editing tool. That's a tool that costs about $20 to download and install, and that has a lot of editing for your Office documents like Excel, Word, etc., etc. Pretty strong tool just in testing out some of the iPad apps for SharePoint. I also got familiar with this tool, and it was pretty strong. I evaluated the paid applications, so there are free versions of every single one of these, but they cut off various features depending on each individual application. So I did go ahead and purchase each one except for Harmon.ie, but they actually show a lot of the features and then just say it's disabled when it's free, so you can kind of get a sense of what they have in their paid application as well. To take a look at some of the key features you're going to find when you look at evaluating mobile apps. Across the board, everyone wants you to be able to have read access to files and lists. That's a no-brainer. Things like sharing a link to a document, emailing a link or emailing a physical document, adding documents to your favorites so you don't have to browse through your sites over and over again if there's a particular document you update frequently. Those are all features that each of the tools really provide. They're all kind of the same, to be honest. Those features and tools pretty much work the same, different menus, different things like that, but for the most part you're going to get those features in every single app you look at. What really gets different is editing access, checking in, checking out, and offline synchronization of the documents. And there are some that are very specifically, focusing on the offline sync. Colligo, Filamente, those are extremely focused on the offline sync. And SharePlus does it as well. And then Harmon.ie is very specific in that you don't download anything to the iPad. Obviously, there are situations where, by default, you don't really want anyone to download certain documents and stuff from your intranet. But the reality is, people are on the go. People need to look at things offline. So you really, depending on your organization, have to make that decision on, is it more important that files ever reach a device, or is it more important that that people can offline sync and go through 20 documents when they're sitting on an airplane? So that's we'll take a look at some of those features and see what they offer. If you take a look at the very bottom, the costs are not dramatically different from application to application, between $15 and $20 per seat. Now that's for the Pro individual edition, which literally you could go and buy right now and download to your iPad. each one of the ones that I have starred, which is basically all of them, they all have sort of enterprise versions as well. So these folks are willing to do things like customize the app if it doesn't do exactly what you want. They can brand it. They can do a lot of different features depending on the company. They'll do different things for the enterprise version. There's also different pricing, which I'm not going to go into because that varies dramatically based on size, based on usage, based on a lot of different things. But so there are enterprise sort of versions of this also that offer additional security and things like that. So something for you to consider in the background. I'm going to focus on the main differentiators of the actual functions of the apps. The two things that I was looking primarily at were the extent of the editing capabilities. So how easy was it for me to actually get to a doc, check it out, and be able to edit it, and then also the offline syncing capabilities and how those worked in the different apps. So I evaluated on this key scenario. Can I log into a SharePoint site, browse to a file, check it out, edit it, and check it back in without reading any documentation? I wanted to go at this as if I was a user and I downloaded this and I didn't have time for training or I missed the training, what exactly might happen? Because as much as our IT departments out there and our training departments try so hard to educate our users when a new piece of software comes into play or a new app comes into play, I think we all know that not everybody gets the information or they may not remember. So I wanted to sort of go into these literally as blindly as I could so that I was portraying a real user that would encounter this software. So I'm going to go to Colligo first. And it's Colligo out of the box. The biggest strength is its offline syncing. And anyone who's used some of their other products, they have really good products for Outlook integration, things like that. But the thing I found with their app is that their usability isn't as strong as it could be. And I'll show you a little bit about what I'm talking about. And there was no check-in, check-out feature, or at least none that I found within the interface. So if it's there, which I don't believe it is because none of the documentation indicated that, it really wasn't a good experience from an editing capability. So if we take a look at Colligo, this is their sort of main screen. And you can see they have favorites, they have libraries, lists, they have basic browsing capabilities. And if you go into it, you can see you can browse the site. You can go into different departments. It works pretty seamlessly. It's very, very easy. I'm taking a look right now at a discussion thread. You can see it has 18 different entry points here and 18 different entries, so I can kind of cruise through those, take a look at each of those. Very easy to navigate. And most of the applications look really similar to this. So you'll see in the other screenshots, this is a pretty common convention, seems to be working well. If we look at the discussion properties, we can see that you can actually set sort of different views, different options down to sort of this list and library level. So if I want to make sure I get this discussion list every time I sync on Colligo, I'm going to make sure I have all that turned on. And then you can even sync the views so that if there are different views that you've set up, and this isn't as relevant maybe for the discussions, but for certain libraries, where there's a lot of documents, those views are really great to be able to kind of sift through some of that information. So you can bring all those down as well. So the offline syncing itself is really strong. You can do a lot of different settings. You can turn things off if it's a big library, et cetera, et cetera. So in viewing a file, this is a specific file. You can see that the document is synced, so it's set for on. You can see the options that I was talking about earlier. These are kind of those features that all of the tools have. You can open something in a particular app that you might have on your iPad. You can copy a link. You can email a document as an attachment. You can email the link to SharePoint, which is great, of course, or you could go to the folder where that document exists. So those are great features, really easy to find, easy to use. Editing. So for the purposes of editing, you can edit the properties of a document here. You can see that I could actually go in and edit any of this information. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's like to go ahead and open this document. And I'm going to switch to a different document because obviously a JPEG isn't very editable. So if I take a look at clicking open in, I'm going to get some options. And interestingly, it brings up some of the other competitors, which I think they should maybe take a look at. But you can open in Quick Office, which is what I'm going to do. And I went ahead and I actually made some updates to the text where I said test Colligo. And I came up here and I tried to click save. And when I clicked save, it brought me into the Quick Office interface, leaving me with a dead end on, well, how do I get my edits back into SharePoint? And basically from this point on, I was extremely frustrated because I tried to save as, I tried to cancel, I tried to click everything I could, and at the end of the day, I didn't have success in getting that app or getting that document back up into the network. The other issue that I had was that as I looked at the properties, I saw that the sync was on, and I had started to try and edit this document, and I realized I should kind of double check on the real site, quote unquote. And when I went to the real site, I realized that this document was actually last modified 5/31. And this one obviously was modified April 9th, even though the sync documents was on. So what happened was, I had a version after this one from 4.9, and what happened was, even though the sync was on, the sync intervals were set to manual. And so I didn't realize that I hadn't synced up my documents. And this is a pretty, I could see this as being a pretty common scenario where you might have a problem with people not grabbing that most recent document. That's the whole point of putting things in SharePoint, is so that you have the most recent thing, you can take it, it's seamless, it's quick. So just the default properties and the default settings kind of got me into a little bit of trouble. So as a blind end user here with no help from IT and no training, I kind of failed on this test. So this was sort of my litmus test and my starting point for other tests. Colligo, I think, is best if you have, let's say, if you have lots of documents that people want to just pull down, review, read through, historical information, things like that. And just the fact the file check-in, check-out wasn't really integrated into the app, and the editing process wasn't integrated into the app. And I think when you see the next example, you'll understand, what's possible. And because of the sync settings, I was not editing the right version of the document. So that wasn't my best experience. So that's my review for the Colligo app. Filamente was actually very similar. I could check the file out, but I couldn't actually determine how to check it back in. So that caused some usability issues. I couldn't find a button anywhere. It kind of left me in that same endpoint that Colligo did, where I was sitting in Quick Office and I couldn't get back into SharePoint or back into the app. The one thing about Filamente, which is not common in all the other apps, it also has integration with Dropbox. So if people are using that for large files or any kind of file sharing, you can actually upload and download and utilize Dropbox. So that's kind of a unique feature that I wanted to point out with Filamente. But in general, the app kind of behaved the same way as Colligo. So I thought I'd move on to a different experience so you guys can get some exposure to another one. SharePlus. So this one has a lot of really good integration points, and I'm going to share those right now. The sync settings were more intuitive, better for me as an end user without any education on the tool. But then when I did have some questions, I was able to email them, and they were pretty responsive in terms of getting back to me on, here's how something works, or yes, it can do that, no, it doesn't do that. So I was impressed with that. Again, you see this interface. It looks really similar to the Colligo interface. So, on first glance, you're like, well, they're kind of the same. But as we get into it, their menu is a lot different. So they have, instead of sort of the open, favorites, all the, send link, et cetera, their main menu is edit the item, add to favorites, check out, or delete. Obviously, depending on your access, it all honors the SharePoint access. And the other thing that it just does nice things like this, like tap this to open. I might not have known right out of the bat that this was actually clickable, but because they had this little instructional text here, that was a really great move on their part. Very simple, but it helped me through the process. and I think that's one thing that they do throughout is really help you use the tool throughout the process. So if we take a look, just to show you another option here, I can edit all the properties, I can do things like enter keywords, et cetera, and save that. This is their sort of extras menu where you can copy your email or email the URL, etc. They have a print function, which a couple of them have. But then also their editing process is really, really quite good. So if I wanted to check out this document, I actually can click check out. It confirms that I really want to check the document out. It takes me into this view. I tell it what I want to edit it with, so Quick Office. And then it does something different than the other apps, than Colligo or Filamente. It has this awesome Save Back button. And what that does, when I click that, it says, okay, now do you want to open that back in SharePlus? Yes, I do. And then it says, do you want to keep the local version or do you want to update it? So I go ahead and update it, and then I can just check that right back in with this menu. And that, to me, was a really key sort of killer feature in order to just guide me through that. That was a lot of steps, but it really wasn't hard. And there's very few things you can actually click on. So it's, even having no training, having no education on this tool, I was able to really easily use it. So this, for me, was a really great tool, great experience. I can make notes just like I do when I check things in right from Word. And then the other thing that they do is most of it is by default offline, which is fine. For my purposes, I don't want everything pulled down. One of the problems I had too was I had a document a document library with lots of large files, and Colligo was trying to pull all of that down, and it kept timing out, and I was having connection problems. And the other nice thing that this does, if you do turn on the support, is you can say only bring back documents that are X amount and smaller, so that you can kind of control the flow of information that's coming down to your iPad and that sort of thing. So I think those are really nice features, and all in all, I had a really good experience using this tool. So I'm giving it the winning ribbon for this demo and for this sort of review process. It was the only product where I could completely seamlessly create my use case and complete it. It didn't require any reading or instructions from their site or anything like that. And the assistance was good when I had some product questions. So, I highly recommend it. I think it was a great tool. They were very thoughtful in developing it. I did want to go through another product called Harmon.ie. And Harmon.ie actually has a fantastic UI. Except for properties, I don't know what they did on that one, but it wasn't quite as great of an experience as the rest. It does have check-in, check-out built into it. I experienced an error, but I believe it was because I had the free version, so I'm going to give them a pass on that. So I'll show you the screen in just a second. But the one thing that is their, sort of potential problem is that there is no offline sync. So if I'm getting on an airplane that doesn't have Wi-Fi, I don't really have a way to work. So, and I don't have a way to check out files and, pull down a few things that I need to work on and then sync that folder back up later. So the other thing it does have is social feeds, and I'll just show those real quick. So this is their interface. It looks a little bit different than the Colligo and the other the SharePlus interface for a particular document. The icons are really helpful. They have the big check-in, check-out buttons, the notification that you have something checked out. So everything looked really good. You can open in Quick Office, and the only thing that was kind of a letdown was I think they actually they kind of lost it here on this properties window. It just doesn't look great. Like all of their other screens look really elegant and clean and interesting, and somehow this screen got stuck in there, and I'm sure they'll fix it in a future release. These get updated all the time. There's new releases. I had done a review, and then I realized that one of the apps had improved their features, so I had to change it just about 5 days ago. So Harmon.ie also has these social updates. Because it's connected to your intranet all the time, you can actually take a look at people updates. So if you're using things like the status and the activities and things like that, you can see a running feed of all of the things that are happening, new documents that are being uploaded, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is a really nice feature. Do I think it's a necessary feature for an iPad app? Maybe, maybe not. Harmon.ie specializes in some of this social stuff. So it's just a unique feature that none of the other apps had, and I thought it was worth sharing with you. So in summary, the best all-around app is SharePlus, in my opinion. The best UI and social capabilities, Harmon.ie is really good, but they don't have the offline sync, so that could be a killer for a lot of organizations. And Colligo and Filemente's user experience caused some problems. They're good tools, but they need some work on the UI aspect and maybe some of their settings. So that is my presentation. I know that was very quick, but there was a lot to cover, and I hope that this got you a really good sort of really specific look into the features, because on the surface all of those apps really do look similar. So I hope that this was a great way for you to kind of become a little bit more critical on, okay, what does this really do and what do I need my apps to do if I decide to roll these out to my organization. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we would love to take any questions or comments you guys might have, and Steve will be organizing and moderating that.
Great, thanks, Julie.
We have a couple minutes.
Yeah, a couple of questions. There's a question here. Did you notice a significant difference in functionality between connecting to a MOS 2007 site and a SharePoint 2010 site? Or even, I guess, a better question is, do all of these that you reviewed work with both MOS and SharePoint 2010?
Per their websites, they all work with 2007 and 2010. I did not test 2007. My test solely went through 2010 sites. So I wanted to keep it all consistent, but per their websites, they do have information on which platforms they support, and most of them support even like BPOS and 07 and things like that. So
both and you found that both BPOS and Office 365 were supported as well?
I haven't explicitly seen 365 as much, but my guess as a longtime SharePoint person is that the architecture is really similar, so I wouldn't see any reason why it couldn't support 365, but we'd have to confirm that. So.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, great. Another question. This goes back to SharePlus.
Sure.
What do you recall what happened or what the experience was like if you tried to edit a file without checking it out first?
I do not recall explicitly that scenario, but if that's something that the person is interested in, we can certainly let you know.
Okay. Next question is, this is a very specific question. Do you recall who you used for support for SharePlus? Like, was there a specific email address, or was it within the app?
I believe I actually went to their site and just emailed an address that I found there, and I don't recall offhand what that was. I could look it up and get back to that person offline, but I just literally went to the website.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another question. Let's see, which apps would receive a link to a document via Outlook and then be able to open the document on the mobile device to view? And is that more of a function of the that Office application you were using as opposed to
exactly.
the mobile device or the SharePoint mobile apps themselves?
Right, that's correct. So that would be totally dependent on what that individual person that's opening the email has available to them.
Okay, great. Was there a breakdown of what mobile devices? I know you looked at primarily iPad apps, but did you find that a lot of these have both, not only iPad, but they have specific apps that are geared towards the iPhone, and as well as Android-capable apps as well?
that's a great question. Most of these have versions that will work on the iPhone. The only one that has of the 5 that I evaluated, that has an Android version is SharePlus. The other ones are all iPad only. Harmony says that Android and the others are forthcoming. There was no timeline on that. So of all of them, the only one existing that had a non-iPad or non-iPhone specific app was SharePlus.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Just going through a couple, make sure we answered all the questions.
Sure, no problem.
In regards to the ones that supported offline sync, any guidance on max file sizes, or based on your experience where the sweet spot is for, what should be synced and what shouldn't be synced?
That is a really great question. For me, there were smaller folders. Like I think things like folders where there are maybe like 100 documents or so. Those are easy to bring down. But when I started testing, some of our, just for our own perspective, our proposals are very image heavy, and all of those are at least 10 or 15 meg when we create those. And we had a document library with at least probably 300 or 400 of those, and then hundreds of Excel sheets that went with it, and that just completely brought down my connection, and it timed out, and I was never actually able to sync those folders. So the folders that I was able to really successfully sync were more things like simple Word documents, Excel files, somewhere around 100 I think was good. I don't have formal statistics on those numbers, but that's a great question that we can certainly look into more and maybe do some follow-up on.
Yeah, I mean, and you're not necessarily going to want to do large videos and sync those up over the
sure,
onto your iPad. It's really geared more towards Office documents, right?
That's right.
And smaller ones at that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're about out of time, and I think that takes care of all of our questions. Oh, hold on. I see a couple questions about BlackBerry support.
Oh, I didn't find anything. I didn't look really hard, but I did not see anything that is friendly to the BlackBerry platform. SharePlus had several on their website. I don't remember that BlackBerry was one of them. That would be the only one, since they were the only one that had anything else.
Gotcha.
But I'm not saying that they do. Just that would be the place to look, just to see their other platforms.
Great. And I'll put one more question out there for you, Julie, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
No problem.
About 5 minutes over. Did you evaluate any of the apps from a security perspective?
There are 3 apps that either with the Pro or Enterprise versions, they have additional security. So when you set up a site in all of these, there is you set up your username and password, and you can elect to save that for future logins, but then you can also, on top of that, do an additional pass lock. And Filamente, Colligo, and SharePlus all have that additional security layer. And you would definitely want to kind of take a look at what each of them offers, but it is another level of security on top of just your username and password for the site.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, Julie, this has been great. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. And with that, we're going to conclude today's 30 on Thursday. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks when we talk about digital signatures. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.